I was recently sick and locked away in my room, and like everyone else does, I whittled away my quarantine trolling for indie sci-fi films on Hulu. That's the thing we all do, right? Luckily, I found a couple. They were interesting enough that I wanted to talk about them, but whether they were interesting for good reasons, well, let's start, shall we? My journey started with Beyond the Edge, or ISRA 88, or Beyond the Edge ISRA 88. We cold open on two men fighting, and then we see these guys waking up, and this scene actually does a classic job of showing us our characters. One is a clean military man, the other more slovenly. During our introductions, we see another classic sci-fi trope, the picture of a girl in the locker. But in both instances, the movie doesn't go out of its way to tell us. Instead, it just shows us. So here are two heroes, Abe and Harold. The premise of the movie is that these two men are on a mission in space, and we'll get to specifics in a minute. Just stick with me because, geez, the movie's tricky to talk about. Look, we'll get there. But before that, Harold dies. Spoiler, Harold dies. I'm kidding, it's not a spoiler, it happens like 15 minutes in. And for the next little bit, it seems like this movie's going to be all about Abe now grappling with the fact that he's completely alone. That lasts until the ship slams into something. Abe wakes up in this room with just all kinds of shit going on, and in a movie with a bunch of surreal elements, this scene is by far the surrealist. After the dreamlike sequence, we're back in the ship and Harold is alive, so now let's revisit that premise. Okay, real actual spoiler warning here, but in all honesty, I think that what I'm about to tell you will make this movie better. It'll definitely make it easier to watch, but if you want to spend 2 hours completely lost, by all means, skip ahead to here, okay? 3, 2, 1. We're dealing with multiple universes and wonky timelines here. The rest of the movie is told non-linearly and potentially through multiple realities. Furthermore, the movie is possibly unreliable. What follows is a series of scenes that slowly build a backstory to the mission. The mission was to find the edge of the universe, hence one of the names of the films. We get to see Harold and Abe grow closer by going backward in time. We're also clued in on details that help explain the finale. As much as it can, the ending is open-ended to say the least. Their relationship and the effect of isolation was interesting for a while. The movie's biggest weakness is that it's bloated by these extra scenes. Take this honeymooners scene. Sure, it's fun, and Harold in this role does a really nice job, but if you take the scene out, nothing about the overall movie changes, which is no good in anything you write, from a school paper to a movie. The director needed to be reined in more. This movie should be nowhere near 2 hours, and it lacks focus, jumping around in plot, tone, and theme. So, I guess kinda like this video. Don't get me wrong, it does have a lot going for it. Both the main actors do a nice job of carrying emotion with little dialogue. In a scenario where exposition isn't natural, they do a good job avoiding it, but getting their point across anyway. And the evolution of the relationship seems pretty natural, although there are some, let's call them bumps in the acting.
I fly this ship!
The movie is shot in an interesting way. The camera really conveys the atmosphere nicely. They use simple tricks, but they do a great job of getting across the isolation and claustrophobia of the ship. There are beautiful scenes like this one that really convey the passage of time and the theme of multiple realities, while also maintaining a theme of loneliness. But then again, some scenes look terrible. You could do these sparks on your computer if you wanted to. I understand maybe that when editing they felt this scene was a little bit dry, but this is worse than not touching it at all, in my opinion. Overall, the good outweighs the bad in terms of production, but the bad shows its head just often enough to be jarring. But what the movie has going best for it is its premise. I will admit, I'm a sucker for good sci-fi premises, and I have a higher tolerance for bad media if it has a good sci-fi premise or at least leads to more thought. I like the entire Matrix series because it's fun to think about, but that's a whole nother can of worms for, some other time. But Beyond the Edge's premise is a doozy. The movie dangles enough in front of you, but forces you to think about what you're seeing to piece together the puzzle on your own, and that's fun to do. Here's what I came up with, and keep in mind that I may, probably, definitely, am entirely wrong. Get ready, nerds. Here comes some nerd talk. Nerd talk. This movie takes place in an alternate universe from our own. It's almost impossible to figure out what kind of world these guys come from. If you look close to technology, it varies from looking like it was built in the 1950s up to the 1970s. The TV they watch is all black and white, and in the surreal dreamlike sequence, everything looks like the 1950s. But then Harold remarks that these bracelets will make him look like a lame baseball player, which I understand to be a recent trend. Furthermore, this is a tiny, finite universe. Using some of the numbers in the film, I estimate that they traveled a mere 20 light years to reach the edge of their universe, which is absurd. To put that in perspective, our galaxy alone is roughly 100,000 light years across. Again, this movie is unreliable. When the ship reaches the end of the universe, it shatters the barrier, thus causing multiple universes to collapse into each other. Here one of two things starts to happen. Either we begin to follow different iterations of the two men and each scene is potentially a new pair in a different universe, or we're looking at some form of quantum immortality. That first theory will be easier to tackle, so let's go ahead and start there. There's evidence that we're following different iterations of Abe and Harold, not least of which is the very first scene. Remember that one? Those are different guys. In fact, these guys show up multiple times in the movie, and it's explained that this scenario isn't just happening to Abe and Harold. This, along with the ending, which I won't spoil just in case, make it clear that the movie is moving its focus to different people. That said, it's tough to tell exactly how many. It's possible that the movie is following one pair of Abe and Harold, only the end is different. It's also possible that each scene is a fresh new pair. All we know is that somehow Abe is having memories from other universes, but he doesn't understand them, he just draws them. The second, far more difficult to explain possibility is a form of quantum immortality. I'm gonna butcher this due to time and the fact that this shit is way too complicated for me, but in super simplistic layman's terms, the idea behind popular quantum immortality is that your consciousness can actually jump between realities. It comes from a thought experiment, not unlike Schrodinger's cat, in which when you die physically, your consciousness lives on in parallel universe. In Beyond the Edge, the collapsing of the universes on each other may have led to some consciousness exchange. This allowed various iterations of Abe to remember the events of other universes. This is where his memories come from. There's less evidence to support this in the film, but it would explain how the various Abe's minds were linked. I lean toward the first theory than the second, but the movie's ending throws a massive monkey wrench into everything anyway, and I have no idea what's actually going on, so I just want to talk about one more cool science thing. We know the ship they're on is capable of faster-than-light travel, and we get to see it from the outside. It seems like it has a warp drive. It's pinching space in front of it, and it's expanding space behind it, and it's capable of breaking down matter in its path, so maybe it has a black hole power source or something, and it's super cool, and they only have like one line talking about it, and I love it. This movie has an interesting premise, interesting direction, and interesting acting. It gives you a lot to chew on, and it doesn't hold your hand. I like that. But this movie needs more focus. It tries to do too many things, and it wanders through all of them. There are multiple interesting movies in here. The scenes about isolation and being lost in the void have a certain Twilight Zone feel to them, but all smashed together, it just doesn't quite work. 2 hours is frankly absurd for this film. Look, I get it. 2001: A Space Odyssey is an iconic film. A lot of people try to do it. But not everyone can make a long, plotting film, and not everyone should try. I know this film was doing it on purpose, but it's just too scatterbrained. Honestly, a second viewing, knowing what was going on, was so much better than the first. At least I had a mental structure to follow. But this movie isn't going to get a lot of people to a second viewing because most people just won't finish it a first time. It's too incoherent. Huh, that's funny. I didn't mean to do that. At this point I should have consumed a ton of fluids and taken a nap, but I'm an idiot, so instead I kept going with coherence, which is actually rated on Rotten Tomatoes, so, that's a start. This film was interesting. It became more interesting after I did some research, but we'll get to that later. Let's run through the film real quick. This movie is about a group of friends who get together for dinner on a night that a comet is flying near Earth. We start out with our protagonist on the phone until it breaks for no reason, and immediately you can see a potential problem. The shot is constantly out of focus. Now you might be thinking, well hey, this is the first scene of the movie. The idea is that the movie is coming into focus. Maybe the rest of the film will look better. It won't. In fact, the shot quality is one of the biggest complaints for this movie. The camera is constantly going in and out of focus and shaky. It's almost shot like a found footage film, which would be fine except it's not, a found footage film. There's no reason for the camera to act this way. I suppose they may be trying to convey the fuzziness of the scenario, but, that's what you have, what are they called? Actors for? Oh yeah. Let's talk about the acting. The acting is actually very good. When all the characters show up, it really feels like a group of friends arriving to a dinner party. There is great chemistry between everyone. There are some actors who struggle when their character has to strike out on their own in a scene. But overall, the acting is good. So the friends get together and start catching up, and you begin to notice something. Every once in a while, the movie makes a big deal out of an innocuous detail, and it basically screams, "Remember me." "Oh, my phone's shattered. Remember that for later." "Oh, where'd they get this plant? Remember that for later." "Oh, let's talk about this door. Remember that for later." They could have called this "Guess How Clever I'm Going to Be Later," the movie. So while eating dinner, these characters catch up with each other. We learn a bit about the group. This guy was a TV actor. This girl was a dancer. This girl works in an outreach program in Silicon Valley. Aren't these characters just so relatable? The power goes out during dinner, and everyone goes outside where they see a house nearby that still has power. Two of the group, Hugh and Amir, go to the house to see if they can call Hugh's brother, while Actor Man goes to see if he can't get the generator running. Eventually they return worse for the wear with a box containing numbered pictures of the group and a ping pong paddle. It is here that I must put up my spoiler warning, because while just the beginning, the reveal of the gimmick of the film was very cool. If you wish to experience it yourself, pause here, and you can watch the whole movie on archive.org for some reason. Skip to here now for a wrap-up. Final warning, here we go. Things get weirder when Hugh writes on a note to put on the house that has lights. Right before he leaves, someone comes to the door and leaves that exact same note. Due to the comet, they are interacting with multiple alternate universes, and this reveal is handled pretty nicely. And here things really take off. Another larger group decides to go out again because the plot needs to be advanced. And they run into another version of themselves and run away for some reason. Why'd they just run away? Why did no one try to make contact?
And you didn't say anything to them? Would you? No, I wouldn't. I think I would have thought I was going to die or something.
Okay, so that's it?
What? Why? Has anyone been threatened? Is there any indication of danger? No? Let's just advance the plot then. So we find out that this Amir and Hugh are actually from another universe, introducing the idea that the universes are so similar that it's tough to differentiate between them. But we need some more conflict, so...
Collapsing. If we're collapsing right now, I'm going to collapse
realities.
on them. Okay, wait a minute. I'm not going to wait for them to collapse on us.
Actor guy says he wants to collapse on the other universes and that he's going to kill people. Turns out he's an alcoholic and fears that if another version of himself is drinking, he will become actually homicidal. And all of his friends don't seem to be shocked, nor even mind that much. Are you rooting for these people yet? So everyone's afraid that other universes are going to show up and, I don't know, do things. Someone even suggests staying indoors. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good idea. Why not?
Well, we can't just sit here. What else?
Oh, right. The plot. Over time, we begin to learn that the group we've been following is not all our original gang of merry, likable, lovable fellas. Because it's so hard to differentiate between the universes, the groups get mixed up. We end up in a different house with a group made up of characters from several universes who don't even realize it. It truly is an interesting way to handle the concept. But it's hard to build drama out of, so we get some melodramatic bullshit to move us along again. After a while, our protagonist gets fed up and realizes that any chance of getting home is out the window due to there being infinite realities. So she just leaves and goes on to search for a better universe. She finally finds one where the friends did not leave the house, and everything is perfect, so she plans to get rid of her counterpart and live here. Aren't you interested in our character's success? She infiltrates the universe, but her counterpart survives, and the movie ends with her counterpart calling her boyfriend while she's talking to him, setting up some very, very awkward conversations in Coherence 2, the boyfriend trap. This movie had a great concept, but suffered from now what issues. A lot of times it seemed like the movie didn't know how to get over humps, and it just jumped sharks to move the plot. While the acting was generally good, there were times where it was shockingly bad, and even flubbed lines made it into the movie.
And I think that we need to find our way back to our house before the comet passes, because once it passes, we might just be stuck here, wherever we are.
No, don't try that again, it's okay. This movie has these random cuts from one shot to pretty much the exact same shot. I started to become suspicious that there was a lot of improv in this film. That would explain the natural dialogue and the multitude of cuts. Now we'll circle back to my research. It turns out that there was no script for this movie. The actors are all improv actors who were given general character motivations and story information. That explains the chemistry, and it explains the cuts. It's clear that they just kept the camera rolling and then edited a coherent sequence later. This also explains why the characters don't make sense sometimes, because they're being made up on the fly. That they were able to come up with a story that can be followed, given that they had no script to cover a complex scenario, is actually pretty amazing. That said, it does not fix those issues of character motivation. It doesn't get a pass because it was an experimental movie. It is not my responsibility to know about the production of the movie, and it does not clear them of needing to make sure everything works. Maybe 2 of these characters are likable. Everyone else is just the worst. Not only did I not care about what happened to them, I was actively rooting against most of them, most of the time. The movie was made on a tiny budget, but that doesn't excuse the shot quality. Primer was made for $7,000. This movie was enjoyable because the concept was interesting and well handled, but it came up short of being a good movie. Like Beyond the Edge, the potential was there, and while it meant more of that than Beyond did, it still came up short of that potential. I liked it, but I was ready to love it. Oh yeah, I kinda watched one more movie called Dreamland. I started instead of taking a nap, but
Are you familiar with the flying saucer that crashed in Roswell, New Mexico in '47?
Oh yeah, man. Everybody knows about the Greys. Take me to your leader.
I now embrace the sweet darkness of unconsciousness. thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. Have you seen the movie? Does it look interesting? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to recommend a movie for the series, I might just get to it down the line. Please like, comment, and share. And if you wish to see more videos from this or other series, go ahead and hit that subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, my friends.